safe and take care of her next time. Any other final comments, Christina? Yes, sir.
I wasn't expecting it to burn him. He did. I panicked because I didn't want him to hurt. It wasn't supposed to hurt. The amitriptyline, I figured, would help them sleep so they wouldn't wake up and feel nothing. And the potassium chloride was supposed to stop their heart. You know, no pain, no nothing, just... I don't think he knew. I think that the amitriptyline, he just kind of, you know, whined, Mama, Mama. After I laid Justin down in the bed, in my bed, I used a pillow and suffocated.
As hard as it was for you, audience, to hear those words, this woman feels them much more deeply than you ever can, because this is Carol. She is Christina's mother. Those were her little grandbabies. Christina meant to take her own life that day, too, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
You found the little kids?
Yes.
How awful for you.
It was... There's no words can tell you what it's like.
I'm sure. Oh, gosh. Were you... You went over there knowing something was wrong?
Well, yeah, I was supposed to pick the kids up after school. And I had called, she wasn't at work. And they wanted daycare. So I went to see what was wrong.
What did you think when you walked into that room? They were laid out in the bed. And Christina looked... She was unconscious as well.
Yeah. I thought they were all three dead. I saw them, and it was so close to Halloween. The first thing I thought, this is a funny joke. Just a 30-second, you know how your brain can just go click. And then Chrissy was on the floor, and I reached out and I said, what are you doing like that? And she was cold, and I didn't feel any heartbeat. I thought they were all three dead.
The two kids died. Christina lived through it, says she wishes she had died. She talked about the day that she decided to take the kid's life and take herself with them.
And it was just like, this is it. This is the last time I'm going to be here. In fact, I sent an email to the payroll clerk and asked her to send my last check to my mother. Because I owed her some money and I wanted to make sure she got the money. And I remember I stopped on the way home and cleaned out my checking account to give my mom the money. And all the way there, you know, the kids were in the car, we were talking, and I talked to my mom that night when I picked the kids up from my mom's house. And I talked to her for a minute, and I gave her the money, and she was like, where'd you get this from? You don't have this kind of money. And I said, oh, well, you know, I worked some overtime, but I owe it to you. I want you to have it. And I made sure the kids hugged her and kissed her goodbye. And I made sure I made them come back and tell them that they loved her. And I took her trash out to the corner floor, and I told her that I loved her. And we got in the car, and I just kind of looked at her, and it was like, this is the last time I'm going to see my mom.
Your heart is breaking, isn't it?
Yes.
How does a mom find a way to deal with that? I mean, on the one hand, she's still alive, but what a torturous thing that must be for you and her.
It is. It's hard.
Do you hate her for it?
No.
What do you feel?
I feel a lot of pain for her because I know she's in a lot of pain. She was a good mother. She was a loving daughter. There's a lot of things in her life that caused her some problems. And she took good care of those children. She was not
And what I feel for her, I don't know how she makes it day to day, people. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't understand even how she can do it.
Did she want the jury to give her death to execute her?
When they when they made their decision, yes. And she still does. She said, and it's only been a few days ago, no matter what I did, no matter what caused me to do this, what brought up it, I took my children's life. She said, Mama, I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live.
You think there is an explanation for why she did it?
Yeah, I've always thought so.
You'll hear from Carol today what that is, and we'll hear from the people we put together in our think tank to listen to these stories and get a gauge on how they feel throughout the show. We started with a basic question. Who is to blame then when a mother kills her own children? Is there no excuse for it, or is it mental illness? These are the results from the beginning of the show, having heard nothing. Look, 100% of this think tank audience says, what, if a mother kills her children, she must be mentally ill? And for you, that's a justifiable excuse. Okay, we'll see there's a lot of rumbling, because the question was different for you, which is there any justifiable excuse? When we come back, we'll talk about that. You'll find out what went through Christina's mind when she realized it didn't work. I'm not dead. What was that moment like? And why she said she had no choice but to kill her children. And we'll ask the ultimate question then, why do these mothers kill? Next, a woman who believes that she has the answer. Mothers who kill, who is to blame? Please join us.
Feel great.
A son faces the mother he hated.
Took the rest of the amitriptyline that I had, which was about 28 pills, and injected the potassium into my arm. And that's the last thing I remember is laying beside him.
Laying down beside the children, they died, but she did not. John Hall is Christina's attorney who's joined us on the stage along with Dr. Ann Blake Tracy. John, let me ask you first, why, if she truly intended to die with her children, this is a woman who's a nurse. She would have known what a lethal dosage would have been. Why didn't it work?
She took a lethal dose. She took enough to kill 5 people. When a lethal injection is done in the state prison, they only use 2 cc's of potassium chloride. She gave herself 10, but she didn't dilute it. She injected it straight into the vein, and when it got under the skin, it acted like acid and ate a hole in her vein right there at that spot. So it never was able to travel through her system. When she was found unconscious, she just had a needle prick in her arm, but within a matter of days, it started showing up as this big boil on her arm, and by the time I got a photograph of it from the public defender, it was a hole about the size of a silver dollar. And it just rotted through her skin and never...
So, Carol, your daughter really did want to die.
Yes.
Can you understand the judgment coming from the audience and this feeling of how on earth can this happen? There can be no possible explanation.
I can understand it because they don't understand. They've never had that happen to them.
What in your mind, why is the reason your daughter killed her kids?
Because she felt like she had no way out. The way she felt and how she felt at the time was like looking down a tunnel. You can't see anything. It's dead end. There's nothing. I'm not worth nothing. My life is not worth nothing.
Depression. You've heard people describe depression that way. It's a dark tunnel. You're immobilized, you're paralyzed, you can't judge, you can't feel, you aren't rational, you don't understand consequences. That's how it's described. I want you to hear in Carol's own words, because I think that we could all take the leap of a person taking their own life, right? Feeling despondent, taking their own life. However you feel about suicide, you know, if it's cowardly or if it's sacrilegious, whatever, we can understand it. It's very hard to understand then how you go from that to thinking, well, I have to take my children with me. Here's what Christina said about that.
I can't say exactly when the kids became a part of it, but I was sitting there thinking, well, who's going to take care of the kids when I'm gone? Because up until this point, all I ever heard, just my son had ADHD, and people who would take care of him were always like, he's a handful, he wears me out, he does this, he does that, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I get calls from the daycare. Mom was keeping them in the evening times, and she was always just so exhausted. And so in my mind, nobody wanted them.
Carol, you would have taken care of those kids, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't have had a chance. Those two children both had fathers. I'm the grandmother. I would have lost them. They would have been separated by several thousand miles because each one of their fathers lived in different areas. But you people, you're making a decision based on your perception at this point, not what she was going through at that time, what she saw.
Okay, what is it? We can't hear you all.
Making a decision about life and death, not just about what's going on.
Can you think of any reason, though, why this mother might have felt she was in such a dark place? What are you saying?
It doesn't matter.
She had a weak mind.
You're right.
We hold cigarette companies responsible for lung cancer. We hold drunk drivers responsible for the lives of the people that they have accidents with. We hold these people responsible, and this is even a more heinous offense. To take the life of a child is inexcusable. It's just like saying, well, the guy was drunk because he was depressed, and that's why he smacked into the van and killed all those people. But we don't care about that.
I think you reflect the feelings of most of the audience. Obviously. Let me introduce then Dr. Ann Blake Tracy, because you say there is a reason. There is an explanation. What is it?
What we have been told over the last 10 years or so is that the magic cure for all of us is to increase serotonin in all of our brains.
Meaning
The
take an
new
antidepressant.
Antidepressants that are on the market are designed to increase serotonin in the brain. Dr. Felix Suhlman, who was one of the very first to begin to research serotonin, found that serotonin would make even rabbits, the most docile creatures of all, aggressive. Serotonin is how LSD and PCP produce their effects. We saw mothers killing their children back in the 60s, and there were mothers on LSD. What I'm saying is that we're doing it again. These mothers are being told this is a wonderful cure, it's going to help them, and instead they're going psychotic.
On an antidepressant, can a mother not rationalize right from wrong?
No.
Did this mother not know the consequences of injecting those babies?
Your whole value system turns upside down. Your thinking becomes so bizarre, you don't know what you're doing. Dreams become reality.
Step up to the mic if you have something to say over here, please. So in other words, she could not have been responsible for her behavior in your view.
In my view, when you look at brainwave patterns of somebody on these medications who are beginning to react to them, it shows them in a complete and total anesthetic sleep state, walking around, appearing, functioning.
What about it?
There's no brain.
She planned this. I mean, she said she went to have the children see her grandmother for one last time. I mean, that's not a zombie walking zombie.
She was rational enough to calculate her last day and her final words.
You can do rational things even in a drug-induced state, but the thought patterns, and I've done this for 10 years. I was in your place 10 years ago. Before I began to learn about these drugs, I would have stood up and said the same thing.
Something is happening, audience.
I mean, large majority of mothers doing this are on these medications.
I know something is happening. The list I showed you at the top of the show, hang on, let me get out here because we can't hear without the mic. What is it, ma'am?
She wasn't thinking right. In other words, her brain just went to waste.
Right.
She was weak in the mind.
Right.
Behind what?
So many of these people say that their brains are turning to mush.
Or that's just the way they just want to think. They should think.
When we come back, I'll introduce you to a man who feels the way most of you sound like you're feeling right now anyway. He does not buy the antidepressant excuse. He says that antidepressants are lifesavers, not life takers, and that these mothers are the only ones to blame for their actions. You'll hear more. We'll see what you think as we continue. Take full responsibility, doesn't she, Mom?
Yes, she takes full responsibility. And before you judge, before any of you judges, how many of you can stand up and tell me you have been that depressed? Have you been on drugs? Have you thought about committing suicide? I have. I've been there. Yes.
I would say too many of us have been there. But there's no drug in the world that can change your thinking about something. A drug can allow you to do something or keep you from doing something, but it can't change your mind.
If there were any drug like that, it numbs it so that you don't feel what you should feel.
If there were any drug like that, there'd be armies on that thing.
Oh, well,
Plus, any competent nurse would know that that injection would either miss the vein or burn out the vein or what have you. So she wasn't trying.
That's information that nurses are not given. You're told to dilute it. You're told not to be doing it, but not to give it that straight out of the bottle.
Has she tried to kill herself before, Carol?
Suicide with 10 cc's.
Hang on,
like putting a gun in your head and pulling the trigger. And if you blow the, it works sometimes, but not all the time.
We have never seen women commit such violent crimes as we have since these drugs hit the market. Women did not shoot themselves. Women always took the easy way out. We are seeing them do things that we've never seen them do before. It's horrible.
Now, audience, hang on. You know, believe me, anybody who's a parent, anybody who has a heart beating, finds it difficult to look at. I mean, you look at this mom with her children and the family, and she had everything. It's difficult for us to understand how you could ever do this. But if you know somebody who's depressed, who's ever been on antidepressants, you know what a deep, deep, dark well that is. And Todd, you know that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been on an antidepressant for 2 years now. I mean, I went through a really rough time. My father got cancer and died, and that was kind of too much to deal with, so I went on the stuff. And everything you're saying about it, I've never experienced any of it. I'd love to know which ones you're talking about. I mean, it seems like you're looking for somebody to blame for the actions of your daughter. Whatever happened to Crazy? You know, blame her for, she's nuts. Because nobody dragged me on the show here today. I came here of my own free will. I'm not in a mushy emotional state. I know what I'm sitting here saying.
If you have a mental illness, you're not necessarily crazy. Couldn't you make an argument to say if you take an antidepressant, you have mental issues?
It's not as much mental issues. It could be emotional issues. It could be a whole wealth of things. But it doesn't mean, you know, you get on an antidepressant, it doesn't give you an excuse to kill your children and take the blame off of anybody but you.
You don't become violent. You don't have urges that are different.
If anything, it's less violent. I mean, the thing is, I mean, I'm sorry, I would make the analogy that before I was on it, you know, you'd get frazzled, problems would come up, and all this did was kind of put a coating on, you know, frazzled nerves and made it easier to see your way clear to the end. I mean, there's an outcome and an end to everything. You just have to be able to get to it, and when you get really depressed, you can't get there.
You'll make up your own minds, but I just want to say, if you are on an antidepressant or if you're interested in this whole thing, I hope you will go to your medical professionals, people that you trust, or take it upon yourself to learn more, and we'll talk about that
Don't
later
ever
on.
just quit these drugs. Don't ever just quit. Whatever you do, you've got to come off of them very, very slowly. You can go psychotic coming off too quickly. In fact, Yale just announced that 8% of those going into psychiatric hospitals now are psychotic. That's crazy, because they've taken these medications.
The antidepressants. We're talking about the SSRIs. There's a bunch of drugs in the SSRI category We'll tell you about what they are.
I want to say one thing before we're on this subject.
Quickly, please, Carol.
Okay, penicillin is one of the greatest cures we've invented in this century. It works great wonders for anything, but the body chemistry of some people, it's deathly. And that's the same way with these drugs. Half of you may take them and you do wonders. It's wonderful for you, but another portion of you, maybe only one out of that group, has got a body chemistry that doesn't accept it.
That's an interesting point. All right, I've got to go to break, and let me leave you with this thought as we look forward to our next segment. There are always people left behind like Carol. What about the fathers of these children? Robert Kirkwood took his 2 baby swing set, took it down in the backyard just a couple of days ago.
I know that one.
How sad. His wife shot their little children, the 4-year-old daughter, the 3-year-old son. Then she turned the gun on herself. We'll find out when we come back why Robert stands by his wife and says she was an incredible mom. His perspective is coming up. Closed captioning provided by. What you're looking at here is some home video of Robert Kirkwood's darling little children, Kelly and Kyle, 3 and 4 years old. His wife, Rosemarie, for whatever reasons, and he can tell you, shot them, shot herself, leaving Robert to ask why. I'm so sorry, this just happened. I don't even know how this father is here. So audience, I know you have opinions about this. I know you care and that you have great passion, but let's hang on to it for a second so we can get more information out, so you can hear these stories and then see how you feel. You're more than welcome to your point of view, but let's hear from this father's point of view. What happened that day? Did you see this coming? Had she said anything?
Nothing was said, but you could see how she was acting and the things she was doing with the children. You could see the changing from her love, her care for her family to nothing mattered anymore. Well, I came home from work that day and she was asleep on the bed, and I woke her up and I asked her what she was doing. She said she was packing her suitcase. And I said, "Your suitcase?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, where are you going?" She said, "I don't know. I'm packing my suitcase, though." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? What are you packing your suitcase for?" She goes, "Oh, well, my computer." I said, "I got to put my computer up." And so she jumped up and went and sat in the living room. She came back and said, "I got to go to the doctor." She's going to see her psychiatrist. And she left the house, and I was asking her whether I need to pick the kids up or not. And she never did answer me on her way out the door. She just wasn't focusing or communicating, you know. It was really strange, and I didn't know where she was going, actually, if she was actually going to her doctor or not. But anyway, she called me about an hour later, and I'd already gotten the kids, and she come home and smelt that alcohol in her breath when I went to kiss her again. And we started talking about it because it'd been ongoing I travel a lot, and I just come home, been home for 3 weeks, and was gone for 3 weeks. And we've been going over and over about the alcohol. And
see, that's one of the things that these drugs do, is cause these compulsions for alcohol in a lot of people. That's the first thing I saw with these medications, was that overwhelming compulsion to drink for people who'd never touched it before.
Let me show you this. May I, Robert, is this okay?
Yes.
This list right here, it's a list of the medications his wife, Rosemarie, was taking. Page after page of medications. So this was a woman who was dealing with an awful lot. But that day, Robert really feels that if you had been in the car with her, or if this had happened another time, the whole family would have been wiped out.
I could have been there with her. I could have very much been there with her.
How, I mean,
I got upset that evening when we was talking about it. I said, what are we going to do about this problem? Because she'd never drunk, except on a social occasion, maybe once or twice a month, or I mean every other 2 months, you know. And it was all the time. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I mean, I pulled a beer out of her hand, this and that. And what can I say?
She took the kids in the car to like a scenic overlook.
Yeah.
And you didn't find out till the next morning
That's right.
What had happened? That must have been a hellish night for you.
It was. I was up all night, calling friends, running everywhere I could go. I had actually, it was about 9:15 when I came in the house from working on the vehicle, and got on the computer for an hour thinking she went over to her friends because I'd left that night. Upset because she says, what problem, you know, about the drinking.
She didn't see it.
There was no thought process with her. Everything was jumbled. Everything was out of sync.
You say this was a good mother.
Yes, it was. No doubt about it. This is a mom who cared for her family and her kids and me. Anything ever went wrong with me, you know, she was first to call the doctor. Anything, she would be first to do everything.
You do not blame her.
No, I do not.
Who do you blame?
I blame medicine. I blame doctors who don't know medications. That's what I feel. The last 6 months, she was on nothing but an SSRI medication and medication for hysterectomy and stuff like that, you know, stuff she needed.
LEEZA, these drug companies knew. Before these drugs hit the market, they knew there was 7 to 10% of the population that didn't have the liver function they needed to metabolize these drugs. They are not given tests for this problem before they're put on the meds.
Well, they tell us, and I'll read the statement when we come back from one of the drug companies that manufactures a lot of these antidepressants on what they say about these kinds of cases. And I want you to meet an attorney up next who says he's heard it, but he does not think there's an excuse for mothers who murder. And why Ann actually believes that fen-phen, remember the diet drug fen-phen, may have been to blame for Texas death row mom Darlie Routier killing her little boys. All right, we'll talk some more. See you right back here.
The police were called to the home of Darren and Darlie Routier in the middle of the night by a shaken and confused Darlie.
Somebody came in, they broke in. Ma'am? They just stabbed me in my cabin. What? They just stabbed me in my cabin. Who did?
But was this story what it seemed? Darlie's account of what happened soon began to counter what the authorities were uncovering in their investigation. Her husband, family members, and the community were shocked when just 12 days later, Darlie was arrested for the murder of her 2 sons, 6-year-old Devin and 5-year-old Damon. The jury was convinced the evidence pointed to Darlie as the murderer of her son, and she became only the 7th woman in Texas history to receive the death penalty. She currently sits on death row, still proclaiming her innocence. Her jail cell is not far from her former house in the suburbs, but a long way from her dreams of life with a loving family.
Darlie says she didn't do it, but she sits on death row for this crime, which, Dr. Tracy, as you said, brutal, stabbing, repeatedly going through this little boy's body straight through to the floor. What do you think was behind this murder?
If it was Darlie. Now, I still don't know if there's enough evidence to show that Darlie Routier is the one that killed her children. But I do know she was on a medication that increases serotonin, LEEZA. And we have known for 50 years from medical research that if you increase serotonin, you produce psychosis, you produce mania, you produce severe depression, suicide, repeated suicide attempts.
From her diet drug, fen-phen?
Yes, fen-phen increases serotonin. It works very similarly to these new antidepressants. It is not the only case we have of mothers killing their children on those drugs.
Attorney Bill Lane, you're very familiar with this case. What about the fen-phen excuse?
It strikes me that we have gone from, I didn't do it, somebody broke into my home and killed my 2 kids and tried to kill me. And the jury didn't buy that, LEEZA. They didn't buy that. She's a convicted child killer sitting on death row in Texas. Now, if in fact I did do it, I did because some drug made me.
No.
She's not saying it. It's being...
I said that from the very, very beginning. Amnesia is one of the side effects that you get from the increased serotonin.
Because
you
Darlie
get
said she
amnesia.
couldn't remember. Carol, in the case of your daughter Christina, this was not presented as a defense, the antidepressant defense.
No.
The jury never heard that she was taking these medications.
No.
What they heard was that she had helped tend to victims of the Oklahoma City bombing, and there was a lot of post-traumatic stress.
And
right?
she was sexually molested as a child.
John, are you hoping that you will get an appeal and that a jury or a judge may be able to reconsider some other issues in this case?
Our appeal is pending in the Arkansas Supreme Court, and we hope that she'll get a new trial. If she does, it won't be until next summer. But we never raised her drug defense, if there is one. We talked to the psychologist and the psychiatrist about it, and they didn't think too much of it, and so we didn't pursue that. But they testified, our two psychologists and psychiatrists testified, she was acting under extreme emotional distress at the time of the deaths, and we were trying primarily for a manslaughter verdict, because we knew she was going to be probably convicted of something. And we consciously chose not to go further into the drug defense because we couldn't find anybody that would back it up.
I'll tell you when we come back if the drug defense, what we're calling the drug defense, the antidepressant defense, has ever been effective in a court of law. And I want you to hear from Christina again when we come back. This time, what she wants her mother to know. We'll hear that. And moms who murder, let's put it back to our think tank again. Is there ever any excuse? Mental illness, antidepressants. You'll be voting when we come back.
Introducing... I don't blame her for anything. I blame myself.
Carol, you must have searched your soul, though, for answers, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
You know, I look at this mom and I think, as I said before, as hard as it is for us, think how hard it must be for her. You told me that you were feeling for her, right?
Oh, sure. Carol's showing what we think a mother should be or should do. She's here defending her daughter and standing up for her daughter. And you have every sympathy I could possibly offer you, I give to you. I feel tremendously sorry for you. I don't understand why this might not have been picked up earlier. If like the doctor was saying, she was in such a tunnel and there were so many changes. Was there no one else around her to see where she was going or see this tunnel or this pit that she was falling into?
Christina had lived most of her adult life with some type of problem starting with being molested and hiding that from the family. So she had been quite apt at hiding her feelings and keeping those inside rows and talking about them because she didn't, you know, it was like, I'm a failure. I can't do anything right.
This has been used successfully as a defense, LEEZA. Just 2 months ago, a mother in Florida was acquitted for shooting her daughter because of the drugs.
That's a double statement. You just said she wanted to kill herself, to do something to her own self, not her children.
Yes, but the same reaction, chemical reaction in the system that causes you to commit suicide is the same one that causes you to commit homicide. You need to understand the chemical reaction.
Now wait, you guys are the ones at the beginning of the show said for a mother to do this, she must be mentally ill.
She needs to be responsible for herself.
Right.
Responsible people don't commit suicide.
What about the medical community? You saw the list of medications that Rosemarie was on. Were these doctors talking to each other? Were they aware of drug interactions?
They should.
If I get that crazy, why would my husband leave me with my children alone when I'm so depressed? When I get that way, my husband's sticking right there wanting to know, hey, Vid, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting this way? If I start taking it out like on the kids or suddenly you're there when they're with this medicine, somebody has to see.
In October of last year, in October of last year, I went to the doctors and I started asking why. Was her hair falling out? Why was she shaking and trembling, not able to comprehend, not able to function? Well, we reduced a few medications. In December, after she started cutting herself after 13 years without doing this, I went back to the doctors and had 15 bottles of pills in my hands, 8 from the psychiatrist and 8 from her primary care. And they again reduced the medications. Next time she went to the psychiatrist, he was writing more prescriptions. The next time after that, I put her on the last 2 medications on this list, what I was talking about before, and it was still the same. She was functional, but her hair wasn't falling out, but she was still unable to communicate or even talk to me. I asked her all the time, I said, why don't you talk to me instead of these people? Why don't you tell me what's going on? And she couldn't do that. I'd have to ask her what the weather was like just to get a conversation out of her.
There are a lot of levels to this story. I also know there are a lot of people like Todd and many people in this audience who are taking antidepressants who feel that they owe their very lives to it, that instead of being irrational and psychotic and violent and having these unpredictable tendencies, it's made them perform more rationally and given them better function. So I want to focus on that part of it when we come back, what the drug companies say and what representatives from the psychiatric community say. We'll be right back.
The revolutionary cold remedy that...
Let me ask you something. More sympathy than for Christina? Yeah. Is it because Christina lived? No. Had she told our producer the reason I asked you, she said, if I had died, people would have said, why didn't we help that woman? We feel sorry for that woman. But because she lived, it's a different story. Anybody want to cop to that? Let me get to a couple of things that I want to clarify. One is a statement from Eli Lilly that manufactures some of these SSRI category antidepressants. They say, first of all, that they believe that stories like these serve only to scare people who've been brave enough to seek appropriate treatment for depression, a debilitating illness that affects 18 million adults in the U.S. alone. That's one thing. They say no one should stop or start taking these drugs without talking to their physician. Absolutely. But further, they say, regarding the issue of aggression, an FDA advisory panel that examined, they mentioned Prozac's safety profile, ruled that they unanimously agree that there's no credible evidence of a causal link between the use of antidepressant drugs, including Prozac, and suicidality or violent behavior.
That's not true. 5 years ago, I might have felt like some of these people. I probably did. 4 years ago, my son was put on one of these drugs for 5 days. Was never violent in his life, and stabbed a family friend 61 times.
For no reason.
For no reason.
People should question these drug companies and help us.
Mm-hmm.
They
Dr.
should look.
Polsky, tell us where you come from on this. Thank you very much. To make a statement in just a couple of seconds on a talk show is not going to be helpful. We'd have to go into the histories of all these people. Every case is different, and there are different reasons for people's behavior. But I just would like to say that depression is a treatable illness. Mm-hmm. Just like high blood pressure and diabetes, you would go to a doctor to take care of those problems. I would hope that people would consider going to a psychiatrist or another medical professional to take care of depression, because it is treatable. And I think when Tipper Gore came out publicly and acknowledged it, Marie Osmond and several others who have acknowledged it, I think every time that happens, it's a positive step. And I'm not, and our purpose today wasn't to put those kinds of stories in juxtaposition to these other kinds of stories, but just to have people be educated and to consider the point of view that you bring up in your research, which, by the way, is available on our website and on your website. The book is called Prozac,
Panacea or Pandora.
These drugs also state that these are help with suicidal thoughts. And in my case, it didn't do a very good job.
Absolutely.
You're right. We are so out of time, and I apologize for that. Our thanks to all of you. I will be most anxious to hear how these things, what the next chapter is. Thank you so much, everybody. Stay safe, all right? So your fear is, and I think it's important to hear this, that people will be so scared off by this that they won't seek treatment. Yes, absolutely. What about the 35 million people?
LEEZA, how accountable would we hold someone
who have benefited?
Who has slipped angel dust every day?
What about the same way?